Playoffs. Do they belong in racing? NASCAR has playoffs, but should other racing series like IndyCar also adopt playoffs? Let's talk about it. You're listening to On Track with Noe. Hey everyone, it's Noe here, and I'm super excited to talk about playoffs. The NASCAR playoffs just began, and so we're going to talk about that. You know, in sports like football and basketball, playoffs are the ultimate test. You either win or you go home. But what about racing? We see that NASCAR uses the playoffs, and IndyCar and Formula 1 and a lot of other racing series use a season-long points format. So do playoffs make sense in motorsports? That's what we're tackling today in this episode. So I want to start off by looking at some of these series and how their championships are determined. So let's talk about these other racing series. So like IndyCar and Formula 1, they use a season-long points format. Whoever has the most points at the end of the season, that is the champion. Seems simple enough, right? And while there's not as much emphasis on winning, if you do win a lot, then you could clinch the championship early. And we're going to talk about that here in a few moments. But a season-long championship format rewards consistency. Every race counts towards the big picture of the season. Not a single race is wasted. You can't decide to take the week off. I'm not going to try as hard this week. Every race matters. And there's been many occasions in all these racing series where the championship literally comes down to a few points. And you always look back on those seasons like, what if this driver had done this or finished 3 spots better? Then they would have been champion. So every race matters. And some examples I want to give is like, especially in IndyCar, you have Scott Dixon. He's been able to win 6 IndyCar championships built on his consistency. He's been very consistent throughout his championship runs, and that's why he has 6 championships in IndyCar. Or if you look at Formula 1, you have Max Verstappen, and he's won the championship, I believe, 4 times now. And I remember in 2023, he clinched the championship with almost a third of the season to go or something like that. Like, he was very dominant that season. He and Red Bull Racing were. But with these season-long championship formats, is that sometimes they can lack drama. Going back to 2023's Formula 1 season, Max Verstappen had the championship pretty much locked up. Everybody kind of knew it towards the beginning of the season. So it's like, there is no championship fight. IndyCar, even this past season, Alex Palou won the IndyCar championship 2 races before the season was to end in Nashville. So what happens here is you have a driver that builds a big lead, and the finale feels anticlimactic, So having a season-long points format, you're going to have seasons that lack drama, and then you'll have seasons that, the championship is really close. So I wanted to start off by talking about how we got to playoffs in racing, because I believe the only series or the only sanctioning body that uses playoffs in racing is NASCAR. And so this is kind of where it began. So in 2003, Matt Kenseth, driving the number 17 car for Jack Roush, he went and won the championship, and he clinched the championship with, I believe, the second to last race. And he had taken the championship lead during the 3rd race of the season, and he never looked back. At one point, he had over a 300 point lead on second place in the championship. So really, there was never a championship fight in 2003. And so some of the critics said, oh, this is boring, this is not exciting, how dare we have a champion before the championship race and all that. So in 2004, NASCAR responded. They came up with something called the Chase for the Cup. And this really worked well because NASCAR got a new series sponsor in 2004, Nextel. So there was a lot of change going on in NASCAR. And so they came up with the Chase for the Cup. And how this worked is the top 10 in points after the 26th race of the season, they would go on to compete in the next 10 races. Of course, you still have every other driver competing. It wouldn't just be 10 cars competing for a championship, but you would have 10 cars that were eligible to win the championship. Their points would be reset, and they would have 10 races to see who could get the most points. So it's almost kind of like a mix of the old championship format. You have a 26 race season, and then you have your top 10, and those top 10 then have a 10 race season to determine the champion. And so the goal of that was kind of create like a little playoff feel to it. And the first year it worked great. By the time they got to Homestead, the final race of the season, the 2004 NASCAR Cup Series season, there was 5 drivers that were eligible to win the championship. You had Kurt Busch, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Mark Martin. You had 5 drivers that were eligible to win the championship. And in the end, Kurt Busch edged out Jimmy Johnson by about 8 points. So it was a very close championship fight, and it made it very, very exciting. In 2007, the field got expanded to, instead of 10 championship drivers, you now had 12 drivers that would enter into the chase for the cup. And again, whoever has the most points at the end of the 10 races is the champion. And we had an incredible championship battle in 2011 using this format. You had Tony Stewart, and you had Carl Edwards going for the championship. Up to that point, Carl Edwards had dominated the season, and at the end of the chase, at the end of Homestead, the final race of the season, Tony Stewart and Carl Edwards had tied in points. They were tied for the championship. So NASCAR, for the first time, had to go to the tiebreaker, which went to the driver who had the most wins, which was Tony Stewart. So Tony Stewart in 2011 captured his 3rd NASCAR Cup Series championship. So that was an incredible battle. That race, that entire chase was so amazing. And it rewarded consistency still, just like the old format. And it didn't really feel like kind of like the knockout format that NASCAR has today. In 2014, NASCAR came up with the current day version of the playoffs, where basically it's an elimination style playoffs. You have 16 drivers. If you win a race, you are locked into the playoffs, and you don't have to worry about it. I remember in 2014, the first year that this playoff system was in place, Dale Jr. won the Daytona 500, and the rest of the season he just had to have he went out and had a lot of fun and did a bunch of strategy with his crew chief, and sometimes it paid off, sometimes it didn't, but he got 4 wins that season. And so how this championship format again works, you have 16 drivers and you have 10 races. Every 3 races you eliminate 4 drivers until you get to the final race where you have 4 drivers left. And how you determine a champion, 1 race, 4 drivers, the highest of those 4 at the end of the race when the checkered flag falls is your champion. And that first year brought a lot of drama. Ryan Newman, who had gone winless up to that point, ended up almost winning the championship, but eventually went to Kevin Harvick. And there was a lot of drama that season. Ryan Newman had bumped somebody out of the way to get the championship, or to have a chance to make it to the championship 4. Joey Logano was making everybody mad left and right. And then we have so many incredible moments. It created a lot of drama for these teams. Basically, you had like a little 3-race season within the playoffs, and you had to perform. And if you win inside those playoffs, then you would advance to the next round. So it truly was kind of almost like a football type thing. And I remember watching it. It kept me interested. I was fascinated by it. I mean, I loved the drama. It was amazing. And what this playoff format does is it guarantees that the championship goes to the final race. You're not going to know who your champion is until the final lap when the checkered flag is thrown, and whoever of those championship 4 is in front, that's your champion. However, this format does feel very unfair at times. One bad race can destroy your dominant season you've been having. And one of the examples I think of is Kevin Harvick in 2020. He had 9 wins that year, and he missed the championship 4 because of a bad second to last round. He just didn't perform, and he didn't make it to the championship 4. And to be honest, I think he should have won that championship in 2020, but that's just how the playoffs work. You don't perform, you're out. And so, again, this doubles down in entertainment and drama and all that. It's fun. But I don't know. I'm not a fan of the playoffs. At first, when they first came out, I was like, oh, this is cool. But the more I look at it, it's like you're trying to manufacture a Game 7 moment. And what's special about a Game 7 moment? What's special about a Game 7 moment is that they don't happen often. And when they do happen, it's like the greatest thing. It's like legendary moments that are remembered forever. What NASCAR is trying to do for this championship playoff format is they're trying to manufacture a Game 7 moment every single season. And I feel like a lot of fans have grown numb to this. And I don't like that we use one race to determine the champion. That's not how it should be, in my opinion. I think there should be a. I would love to be honest if we went back to the full season format. I think that's the best way to determine a champion. But NASCAR and TV, they have a say, and they want the playoffs because that brings viewers in, that brings people in, and TV loves the drama. So, I don't know. It's interesting. But there is some talk going on right now about IndyCar and whether they should bring playoffs in. Fox has recently bought a stake in the IndyCar, and maybe they want to bring playoffs in the future. But let me give you some context. So this past season, Alex Palou won his third straight IndyCar championship. He won so many races. He won his first Indy 500, scored so many podiums and all that, and won the championship with 2 races to spare. He clinched in Portland again. And so, what about Milwaukee? What about Nashville? I mean, Nashville was billed as the championship race, and there's no championship to decide. It's Palou. I mean, they still had a ceremony for him in Nashville and everything. They brought the trophy, presented him in Nashville, but you already knew who the champion was and all that. But again, you're going to have seasons like that, and you're going to have drivers that dominate. And that's okay, because this old championship format also brought some of the greatest championship battles in history, especially in NASCAR. If you think about it, in 1992, there were 6 drivers going into the season finale in Atlanta that had a chance to win the championship. You think about that, and that was without playoffs. I think about in 1996, you had Terry Labonte and Jeff Gordon. You didn't need playoffs for that. So you don't need playoffs to create. And again, that's when you have it play out naturally, you're going to have a much better Game 7 moment. It's going to become so much memorable. I don't hear a lot of people talking about the championship race in 2017 or the championship finale in 2021. I hear people still to this day talking about the season finale of 1992, of 1996, of 1979 with Darrell Waltrip and Richard Petty. Those are the championship battles that are still brought up today. So, the playoffs, yes, they would prevent a driver from clinching early, and they would create suspense. I mean, if you think about this season, think about Alex Palou, Pato O'Ward, Scott Dixon, Christian Lundgaard. Those 4 drivers going into Nashville on equal ground. Imagine those 4, whoever finished the highest, that would be your champion. Would that truly be fair to Alex Palou, who had dominated the season? No. As much as I would love to see Pato win a championship, that would not be fair to Alex Palou. And because Palou, in my opinion, he deserved that title. He dominated. And the playoffs would erase all of that season-long work that he and his team had put in. So, I'm not a fan of the playoffs. I don't think racing should have playoffs. I think, and this is going back to NASCAR. And again, NASCAR, I love NASCAR. NASCAR was the first the first racing series I got into. But NASCAR, I feel, is trying so many gimmicks and trying to be a stick and ball sport. And NASCAR, auto racing, motorsports, it's not a stick and ball sport. It is so different than that. There's so many factors. You don't just have the championship cars racing each other. They're racing against all the other drivers who are not in the championship. And so that's not really fair. I think about in 2016, Carl Edwards was going to win the championship in the NASCAR Cup Series, and a caution came out from one of the back markers. and he got crashed on the restart and somebody else won the championship. Someone who was not in the playoffs affected someone who was going for their first championship. And that's where, in other sports like football and basketball, you don't have 20 other teams playing on the field at the same time. So I do not believe playoffs should be in racing. Motorsports is its own thing. You should crown a champion by the driver, who shows the most success through wins and consistency. That's how you should determine a champion. So I would love to hear your opinion. I know everybody's got an opinion on this, so it's going to be interesting. But I would love to hear from you. Tag me on Track with Noe, and I'd love to hear, what are your opinions? Should there be playoffs in motorsports? Does IndyCar need playoffs? I'd love to hear from you. So again, tag me on Track with Noe. I'd love to hear your opinion on that. But yeah, playoffs in racing. Yeah, they make it exciting. They bring drama. But are they truly the best for motorsports? And my answer would be, no, they are not. So that's it. Playoffs in motorsports. And we'll see you next time for another episode of On Track with Noe.